when I cried when Leslie asked me about the experience.
Yeah, it'll be good to we'll get into it, and it'll be good. All right, welcome to another episode of the Dueling Parapsychologist podcast. We apologize for how late the release of this episode is. We kind of got busy, I guess. Darryl, you were sick for a little bit. I was sick for a bit. I fell down my stairs like an idiot and twisted my foot. So I'm still suffering from a sprain, but here we are. This is
COVID doesn't kill you. Life is still going to try.
Oh yes, yeah. There was many things tried to take us out here, but
thank God we don't live in Australia where everything wants to kill you.
Yeah, we managed to survive. So
bug or microbe in Australia that doesn't have it in for you. It's shit.
So here we are, episode
whatever.
I think it's episode 5. Pretty sure it's episode 5, part 2 Halloween episode. Yeah, we held our event at the Westin on October 16th. We had, I think it was 22 people, I think, came, and we really appreciate it. It was a great crowd. I got to meet a lot of interesting people, and
diverse, right?
Very diverse. There was a couple military police officers there with their spouses. Met a great lady named Carmel, who is a medium and is willing to get tested by the Rhine or also the Forever Family Foundation, Lloyd Auerbach's kind of foundation that he helps volunteer with. So yeah, no, it was great. And then we'll get into it in a little bit, but you actually had an experience at the event. But it was kind of neat because we wanted to hold an event because we have our huge event coming up in 2023, the Halifax Paranormal Symposium. We're hoping it's a 2-day event, so there's going to be a lot of planning involved from next year onward. This was kind of a good dry run. We learned a few different things on what we can do, what we shouldn't do, maybe what we can change, but it was good overall. And it was interesting because we wanted to hold the event at a haunted location, and you and I had heard that the Westin was haunted, but I couldn't find any information about it. I checked your book, Ghosts of Nova Scotia. I checked your other book, Ghost Waters, in case there was something, because the Westin's near the waterfront. Couldn't find anything. Even checked, went as far back and checked Helen Creighton's Blue Nose Ghosts. And there was nothing.
Like somebody would say, yeah, oh yeah, the Westin, that place is haunted, but you couldn't get a story out of them. And that's why while you were talking about parapsychology and all that, I saw the staff that had served us the lovely dinner in their little room while they were waiting for us, So I kind of wandered out to have a chat with them to try to pin down. The only thing is I forgot a recording device, so I miss all the stories. But there seems to be, and then later on, much after my experience, which we're going to talk about in a minute, they took us up to a part of the building they don't even know why it's there. There's a door, and then there's a almost Greek archway and wall. And nobody can think of why that would exist. It has to be ancient. And so anyway, it was interesting because while we were there, we were discovering that unlike kind of whispers, the whole place is it's full of stories. And I don't want to use the word energy, but everybody that's there, that works there, is aware of it's a strange place to work. And it's been very surprising that they've kept their mouth shut publicly, unlike, say, Citadel Hill, which has gone the other way, made up stuff, and now you can go and take a tour, and I did, and all that kind of stuff. And the tour guide wasn't very appreciative of my analysis of her presentation. But anyway, so yeah, it turned into a very unsuspecting large piece of what we're going to have to investigate. So we've got a place here we've got to try to get back into. And sneak into or whatever way, and try to figure out what's going on there. So yeah, so it was really good, but it was just funny while you were doing the standard stand up. This is what we do. This is who we are. Blah blah blah. All the action was having to, happening down the hall, happening down that hall, happening upstairs on the 8th floor. And I kept coming in and out because I had to ask certain people to come and see if they experienced the same thing I did, and including your mother. And so there was like two things going on at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is, the building was opened in 1930.
Yeah.
So it's not extremely old, but it does have, enough history. I think it was initially built by the Canadian National Railway, and it was called the Nova Scotian Hotel. And then Newcastle Hotels and Resorts purchased it. Now it's called the Westin Nova Scotian.
1930s. That's when it was built. I thought it was back a little earlier.
They started building it in 1928, and the doors opened to it for the public in 1930. So it's not that old, but
was there anything there beforehand?
From what I understand, no. They had built it in 1928.
Okay. Because when you go upstairs, or even when we walked to the room we were doing the talk at, we had to walk down the long hall, go up some steps, walk down the long hall, and then it feels like a building that was built in 3 phases, which makes sense because there's been 3 major, owners of the building, and I was just kind of curious because of that weird room that they used to go to with the arch to just smoke and play card games and stuff like that, and now they can't because it just feels too funny.
Well, the funny thing too is before Newcastle's purchased it, the building itself was scheduled to be demolitioned, and a purchase had gone through at the last minute. So if Newcastle's hadn't have purchased that, God knows.
Oh my God, you couldn't take the Nova Scotian down. That'd be like the Lord Nelson, or taking down what else, paving over the public gardens. There's certain things that are part of Halifax history. And even my history, because I was on my way to Moncton one year, and I was with my boyfriend, and he this back in the 90s, and he stayed overnight, and I stayed till about 7, and then went home, get a couple things, and then got ready, and we went on the train to Moncton. And so I've got personal things, and I went to a party there, might have been Junior Achievement or something, and I went to the restaurant once. But the restaurant kept moving back and forth. Nothing was recognizable when I was there. But anyway, yeah. So but that's for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
They've got this history. The train is right next to it, right? So you go in the doors, you turn right, you walk down, and you're in the train station. I think there would be a big hue and cry if somebody decided they want to put up a 28-story condo building or something instead.
And you're right. That's probably what would happen down that part of town. It's a really fascinating building for sure. Definitely have to try and get in there to investigate, especially after your experience. But the funny thing is like you said, you hear whispers of it being haunted, but there's nothing in print. We talked about a few of the stories, I think, on our last podcast. I found out a few from my dog groomer who used to work there, and she had a apparitional experience herself, but she had seen on the service elevator for staff when she was bringing down dirty dishes to the kitchen. She had seen a Caucasian male standing in the back corner wearing all black, long, 3/4 length dress coat with a fedora. He was looking down. She said hi to him. He didn't respond to her. She kind of had an eerie feeling like that maybe she shouldn't get on the elevator, but she did. Got on, went down to the kitchen, and when the door opened up, she turned around and said goodnight to the gentleman, and he was gone. And then she said when she worked there, she used to work in what the staff call the control room. That's basically a telephone room where if any guests want a room made up or anything like that, you can call down. and she said they would constantly get calls from people on the 8th floor that would report a female wearing a white nightgown would just materialize in their room. Some people saw the girl walk right through their door.
And
And
an old man too.
I never heard the old man one, but
There's an old man that walks that hall. He doesn't go in or associate with anybody, but he's the classical apparition. He just walks that hall. That's what I
interesting.
found. Yeah, by when the staff took me upstairs to show me that weird room that they couldn't understand why it had this Georgian or Greek arch and all this kind of stuff in it. So it was
That's really interesting.
fascinating. It's probably the most fascinating building in Halifax now that you and I know.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
know,
mean, there's 3 apparitions right there that we know of, and then the 4th one, which we'll discuss here in a minute.
we should have a symposium there, actually.
Well, you know what? They treated us. I will say, anyone that wants like a good night out downtown Halifax, I would recommend that you stay at the Westin. They treated us really well. They were fair. Their prices were reasonable. Their food was really good. Certainly have no complaints about that. I would definitely consider hosting the symposium there. The other location that kind of thinking about is that new Halifax Tower that they just built in Bayers Lake, because you got the 2 highways right there, the 102, the 103. It's not too far from the airport. It's got lots of accommodations, and it has a huge, I believe they can hold like 600 people or 500 people conference room. So also another kind of interesting location to consider. There was another story Jamie had told me, my dog groomer. She said one time she was working the front counter, and a lady came flying down the stairwell wearing nothing but a towel, and she was soaked. And she said she was in the shower when she heard something in the bathroom. It was only her in the room. When she pulled the shower curtain back, she saw the female apparition with the white nightgown standing in her bathroom, and then she disappeared. And of course, the customer was freaked out and ran down and told the staff. And then
Now I know why. Yeah.
The other thing she said that would happen too on rooms on the 8th floor is housekeeping would go in and prepare the rooms for the next guests. And all of a sudden, the front desk would get a call saying that the new guests had checked in and the room had been entirely ransacked. So the cleaning staff would have to go up and fix it, almost as if somebody had come in and kind of, destroyed the room.
Huh.
And spoke to another fellow that I play hockey with, and he was telling me he still works at the Westin today. He said about 9 years ago, there was a cook that had passed away at not at the Westin, but he worked for the Westin. And for whatever reason, housekeeping staff and other staff see him in the building to this day, especially down where the staff lockers are in the basement, which apparently is a really creepy part of the hotel. So that was kind of interesting. And then, of course, during our event, one of the waitresses had told us about a story of a little boy on the 2nd floor. So the 2nd floor of the Westin is where all our conference rooms are. And she said that this little boy liked to hang out in the Atlantic room, and that some of the staff would hear him dribble a basketball. Some staff have seen him, and some staff have seen him dribbling the basketball. So it was really interesting. So once we found that out, like you said, I was kind of giving the lecture on hauntings, poltergeists, apparitions. You decided to venture down to the Atlantic room, and you pretty much had what I would say a life-changing experience. And I'll let you tell the story, but
You have no idea.
it is. I'm kind of jealous in a way, because I've never seen an apparition myself. I've seen apparitions do stuff, but I haven't seen them do it. I've just seen the after effects of it, or I've seen a doorknob open up and doors open and close, doors lock and unlock, heard the footsteps, but I've never actually seen like a full or even partial apparition. So anyways, I'll let you tell our listeners what happened.
Okay. Like I said, Elliot was lecturing on what we are, who we are, and all that kind of thing. And I think you had spoke to a person in the audience about the boy dribbling the ball, and I just kind of sniggered, type of thing. It was all right. So it's a story, whatever. And they said the Atlantic room, just and they said just down there. So while you were talking about whatever it was at the time, I decided that, well, the first time I had gone in, I spoke to the staff, and I'd got listened to a few of their stories, and they said they would take me up the 8th floor when we were finished and all that. And then I think it was that you spoke to somebody about the boy and dribbling the basketball, which sounded ridiculous to me. So I thought, being a very materialistic, rationalist person who has a certain life view that is solid, like the desk, suddenly got to learn that everything that I believe in could be wrong. So I decided to go to the Atlantic Room, and that's fine. And it's a huge room. It reminded me of The Shining, actually. And if the devil had been at the bar at the other side, which there was no bar, but if he had shown up at the bar for a beer, I guess it was that Jack Nicholson had, I would not have been as surprised. I walked into the room, and you'll talk about the time you walked into the room as well. I've been doing this professionally since '96, and then semi-professionally long before that. I've been in all kinds of places, lots of rooms, lots of even dirty, dusty basements that these fools go through all the time. And I never felt anything more than a little twitch or something. I walked into the room and I wanted to start screaming. Okay, I thought I spilled something. It's so, the word is discombobulated, and I can't think of a more precise word than that. I walked in the room, I felt instant terror. I wanted to run. This has never ever happened to me before. And this was fun, this was interesting. I fought the urge to run. So I stepped farther into the room. And so that was interesting. But before I could, there's the rational aspect of our brain. The rational aspect of our brain, or my brain in particular, never kicked in that night. It didn't have a chance. The overwhelming feeling of fear and wanting to run away was so bad. But that wasn't what really set me off, because afterwards I could have come out and said, okay, there's an electrical problem there, or there's an infrasound, or there's something else, and I would have put a scientific blah, blah, blah to it. No problem at all. I turned to the left, and I turned to the left, and there was a blonde boy, semi-transparent, who I caught. I don't know what he was doing before. I heard something. Bend down and go underneath a table. I saw the tablecloth move up, but not the tablecloth that's there now. And in my feeling, it could have been a boy or a girl. I brought your mother in, I brought that psychic woman in, and I brought somebody else in to get their feeling, and they all thought it was a boy. It could have been a girl, in 1930s kind of boy's haircut type of thing. I stood staring at that table for a good 10 minutes or so, still terrified. And everything at that moment, apparitions were a theoretical possibility. As a scientist who studied them for decades, they're still theoretical because I've never seen one. I didn't expect one to affect me this way. You know, you could have walked into a room and seen something out of the corner of your eye and just kind of wrote it off. But the terror, the uncomfortableness, the fear of being in that room, of the fact that I felt like that room wasn't in our reality really, and which could be setting off the amygdala and the midbrain rather, and all that, for the fear and flight response. But I can't explain. I can't find a word. I was discussing this a couple of days ago with a friend of mine who was visiting for Christmas, and actually started crying because I can't understand that. That's not I heard a sound, or I heard somebody call. I heard my father call to me today. He's been dead for 13, 14 years. That's fine. I get that every now and then, okay? Audio hallucinations, I put that down to the fact of the intense stress that I'm under, which we're not going to, is unnecessary to get into here. It's a long story, and all it would do would buy me a cup of coffee and give me a smile. Wouldn't affect anything at all. But anyway, there was one point during the Christmas song, Hallelujah, I think it was, that I was setting up that I heard him say, and it was his voice, there was nobody else's voice at all, but his dad, person who I hated with a passion up to his death, that asked, is anybody here? And it took me a long time to think to say, yes, there is. Yes, there is. I just took it just as you hear water dripping. There's no, type of thing. And this is my father, for God's sake. And he was a good father, don't get me wrong. It's just afterwards, as I grew up, we disagreed on just about 99.999% of everything. And I grew to hate him. But as a father, you couldn't ask for a better father. And I'm sure you say the same thing about your father. I miss your father as well. And but the boy destroyed at that moment and for a few days. I didn't know what I believed in. I didn't know what was concrete. I suppose I could put it down to psychosis, but why would I hallucinate a little boy going underneath the table? I would have hallucinated him playing the basketball. That's what I would have hallucinated if that's what I was going to have. I want to get back to that room because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of shit going on with that room. Yeah, I brought in your mother. She didn't feel anything. I brought in the woman who was doing her PhD in clinical parapsychology, which I'm about to start myself, so I'm a little jealous. She's ahead of me. And then I had brought in Connie's sister and that, who allegedly are a psychic. And I just followed them up to the 8th floor and found out various stories. But all through this, there was that experience that I wish I never had. I still wish I never had. I mean, part of me should be saying, oh, that's wonderful. You had an experience with an apparition.
Mm-hmm.
But probably if it wasn't for the fact that the room unsettled me so much, the room hated me. The room didn't want me there. I don't want to use the word evil, but there was something else going on in that room. So anyway, I went back and I kind of spoke to a few people in the room that you were talking to. And now I want to hear, when you went into the room, what was your feeling about it?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, like you said, we had some of our our gear there that
And
are
neither one
used.
of us remembered to use it.
Well, yeah, it was funny because I had it laid out on the table, and I was kind of like involved with the crowd, and I didn't know at the time what you had seen, and you kind of had like this kind of like sidebar investigation on the go, but we could have taken some of the gear down to the room and checked it out. We didn't have obviously the time. By the time our event was done, I think it was close to midnight. And of course, we had a bunch of artifacts that we had to load up. We had your rocking chair. We had the um, make of Annabelle's case with the haunted monkey and all that stuff that we had to load up. So we didn't really have a whole lot of time. So when we were bringing stuff out to the car, you said, "Are you going to pop into the Atlantic room?" I said, "Well, no, not really." And you're like, "Well, like you're right here. Like, why don't you pop in and just take a look?" And I was like, okay. And I was kind of thinking like, like I didn't have like paranormal on my mind at that time, even though we had just finished an event because, it was clocking on 12:30. We're trying to load the car up and I had to run you home. Then I had to get home and I had a babysitter at home. So I had all these other things going through my mind.
Yeah.
But I walk into the room and like temperature wise, it was cool because the air conditioning was running, but I wasn't in there for more than 30 seconds, I'd say. And I felt the same thing without knowing what you felt when you went into the room. I didn't feel welcomed in the room. Sure, it was dark and it was cool because of the air conditioning, but it was something more than that. It was like stronger, like that you shouldn't have been there, weren't welcome there. And then I actually felt, and it's funny because I always make fun of him on the TV show, who I won't mention, but if anyone watches the show, they'll definitely know who it is. But I actually felt sick to my stomach, and I knew Sarah would laugh about that because I always make fun of him when he feels sick to his stomach on the TV show. But I actually felt like puking in that room, and I was only in there for a couple minutes, and I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything. I kind of looked towards the left, like you had, because I knew you had told me you'd seen the apparition kind of towards the left. I looked towards there, didn't see anything. Totally get the reference to The Shining because it did look like that room from The Shining.
Yeah, you expected the music to come up and,
Yeah.
listen,
Yeah.
if music had come up and there were the people there, the devil with the bar, hell, I would have sat down and had a drink.
Yeah. No, it totally looked like that.
It wouldn't have, wouldn't have surprised me at all. If it wouldn't have surprised me at all that, yeah, I don't know.
No,
And
so
glad that
so
you-
I walked out of the room and I told you and Jeff right away. I said I don't like that room. I said I don't like the feeling in it. I didn't see anything, but I said it's not a very welcoming room. And I like you, I've been to a lot of haunted locations, and I haven't even haunted locations where people have said like, yeah, you don't feel welcome here and things like that. And I've never felt anything. But there's something with that room for sure, and it's important for sure to I think if we could somehow get back there to check it out, because maybe like you said, maybe there is some infrasound issues going on, which has been shown to sometimes cause haunting characteristics, or maybe there's really poor wiring in there.
Yeah, CO2, bad wiring. I mean, there's so many things we could check out.
Yeah.
Got to be something going on. There's no word for it. Unless you use the new agey energy, word, or presence or something. But it was just like this damp curtain dropped onto you, and you just, and suddenly you were out of reality. I was in about 25, 30 feet into the room, and I wasn't sure I was getting out the door. And I'm a rationalist. I'm a materialist. I think it's bullshit, most stuff that you see on TV. I'm actually hoping for our first article, Parapsychology or Parascientifica, to do the one I did on in Vernon Oikel's book, where evil dwells. I did an article called "Are Ghosts Extinct?" Just saying how we don't look for apparitions anymore. We put tape recorders down in dusty basements and start yelling to the ceiling. And I still believe those are fools. I always said you can't say some place is haunted until you see something that you can't explain. And then, damn it, I I had it. And for somebody for 45 years who's been through Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, disappointed through Loch Ness Monster and Bermuda Triangle, Bigfoot, I still hold possibility up the Pacific Northwest. You know, and no ghosts are in dusty basements. I mean, for 200 years, the greatest minds of the world have put their energy and their thoughts into apparitions and stuff like that. So work on what they've already done instead of wandering through basements or copying what's on TV, which is crap anyway. Yeah, these guys, yeah, no, these guys would piss themselves if they had what we had. I think we went through it because one thing, you were distracted by the mechanics of finishing up, you know, that night.
Mhm.
I was not so much distracted. I was, in a way, I was distracted because I thought it was a stupid story of a boy bouncing a ball down a ballroom. And then all of a sudden, you know, I'm seeing a boy hiding under a table, which I did go and look at. Not right away though. And I must tell you, I mean, I'm better now, but it really did change my worldview a bit. If only I had been caught. I did a better explanation of it a couple of days ago when Leslie was visiting, and she asked me about it, and I spoke about it and actually cried because, I mean, for somebody as strong as I am in parapsychology, very weak in some other areas, but to have that experience and to have your worldview challenged. I think we all thought if we really see a ghost, it will change us. Will change everything. But we never really thought we would, you know. Many people, Peter Underwood, for instance, who wrote 50 books on ghost hunting and was the ghost hunter for 50 years, president of the Ghost Club in Britain and all that. He never saw one. He died without ever seeing one. And many of the good ghost hunters will say, I've investigated a lot, but I've never seen anything that proves life after death.
That's
Now,
true.
mine doesn't prove life after death, because we haven't been into it to see what's going on in the room with carbon monoxide and infrasound and electrical and all that stuff. But if all that comes off, if we get back in there and we can stay in there long enough to do that, maybe put the equipment in there and get out, and find there's nothing going on. At that point in time, there's two options for me. I had a psychotic break or I saw a ghost. Neither of them are very attractive to me. Let me tell you that right now. Like I said, I'm a materialist and rationalist. I'm open to the possibility of ghosts and life after death, and near-death experiences are just fascinating to me. Out-of-body experiences, deathbed visions. My mother had one. My father had one. They were dying. So yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I'm not scared by it, or at least I wasn't scared by it. I've never been so terrified in my life. Like I said, I was brought to tears. And I was bullied in grade 7 and grade 9. I mean, I had little hunter killer groups chase me around the school, and I had to hide behind, if you had entranceway to the steps, and there's 2 doors, and what they do is they open them up and against the wall. Well, I would go down and sneak in behind one and hide for the 20 minutes of recess, and do that every day while watching them searching the school. So I felt terror many times in many ways because I was always bullied or picked on, or there was another guy that I looked like that. So I got some of his crap too. I hope he got some of my crap. And so, I felt terror. I mean, I felt in various ways, but it was never as threatening as this was. It wasn't life threatening. I felt I was going to lose something else, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't want to be there to find out. Now, that's the interesting thing, now that's the setup. People can laugh about that or whatever. Um, excuse it away, any skeptic and the believers can, after they get over my telling them to skid out of the fucking dusty basements, um, you know, might find that fascinating. But until we really do an investigation, we're not going to be able to. And until I got to know what that was, I want to get back to that room. It haunts me. I want to feel what I felt before, because this time I'll be prepared and I'll analyze it cognitively as well as any equipment we can bring in. If I see the boy again, well, that might be an issue. But that'll be an
Well,
issue.
it's interesting because it's got me thinking, even if we did get back in there, which I'd love to, and we check it out and, everything checks out to be fine, it would be interesting because that's the problem in parapsychology is these are spontaneous cases and it happens spontaneously. So like, what if that night their furnace wasn't working properly and for some reason when the AC was on, it was pumping excessive CO2 in there, which when you went in there and I went in there, part of CO2 or carbon dioxide poisoning, carbon monoxide poisoning, is that it can cause you to feel things such as fear and things like that. So what if, that night the furnace wasn't working, the AC's on, it was pumping excessive amounts in there. We go in there, that happened October 16th. It's a couple months later now. We go in and the furnace has been fixed. So of course our tools are not going to pick up the excessive amounts. So we've lost that continuity at that time. But that's the problem with these cases is that when they happen,
it's my fault. I never thought to go. When I went back in, I was bringing humans in there, and I forgot about the equipment. And I should have either broke up the meeting at that moment and say, we need to go do this, or grabbed your equipment that was on the other side of you and gone in and done an analysis of it. But it's so, I've been doing this for 45 years. It so threw me off. I didn't even think about shit like that.
well, that's the thing. It's so spontaneous that and scary too. And that's the thing. I talked about this on another podcast that I was a guest on, and he was a correctional officer, and we were talking about law enforcement. And law enforcement, when there's danger, trouble, or an emergency, as a police officer, you run towards it. And that's what I did for 15 years. I ran towards the danger. But we talked about how it's funny that in the paranormal, and you see it on TV, and sure, some of it's bullshit and it's fake, but it's so true in the experiences I've had, because I've been in a haunted house and things have happened and it's caused me to fear, and the situation you were in caused you to fear. But it's funny, for whatever reason, paranormal investigators should almost be equivalent to police officers, that when something paranormal happens or supernatural happens, you run towards it. But it's funny because when it happens, as a paranormal investigator, most run away from it, or the fear kicks in. And and policing can be just as scary. Like, you could be going towards somebody with a knife, or you could be going to a gun call and you may end up dead and not return home. Like, it doesn't get any more scarier than that. Whereas, a discarnate entity, historically, they haven't necessarily been able to cause people harm. Sure, there's the extreme cases that you hear about, which usually are we're skeptical of. Or if somebody does get hurt in a haunted house or a poltergeist case, it's usually as a result of them falling or tripping or stumbling. Basically, they've hurt themselves. So I just find it so fascinating. So it makes sense that when it happened, you weren't thinking like, oh, well, let's go grab, because we did have the gas detector there. We could have brought that in, and we had the FLIR as well. So it would have been interesting, because you saw the little boy dive underneath the table. Well, did the FLIR pick up any heat signatures?
Well, how many years have I said to you, okay, we can't prove a ghost until we can see the damn ghost, because sounds on a recorder, cold spots, all the other crap, and I speak of that, doesn't prove a ghost at all. Period, full stop, end of story. You gotta see something that can't possibly be there. And then I said, then that's great, because then you can bring the equipment in and understand what's going on at that moment. And unless it comes back on us that it's carbon monoxide, for instance, or infrasound. But if
Yep.
everything is zero, for us, then we're getting an idea, or a very narrow, a very narrow window of looking through, of what's going on when, if we assume discarnate entities exist, what happens when they appear. It's been to my mind that they would always have to affect the environment of the place they're appearing to. And so there should be some exchange of environment. So the cold spot obviously would be, our environment disappearing into the ether of, whatever's next. And, type of thing. But like I say, it's funny. You're trained to run towards things, and paranormal experiences. I mean, we look for this all the time, and we think we're trained what to do at the time. And then when you get into a big one, it's sort of like, the amygdala and the what's above the amygdala that's also for anxiety. Begins with an M or something. Anyway, I'm forgetting my neurobiology. That kicks in. Because how do you train to run towards a ghost?
Mhm. No, it's true.
You know
It's
what I mean? We love these things, and I love these things here, and everything's nice and safe, and all that. And sometimes they can scare you. I've got one of those drives Jeff crazy. My roommate, mannequins, and it can freak you out for a second. But there's no way to train for what we experienced in that room.
no. Oh, definitely not. And like, we may never see that apparition ever again. Like the next apparition you see could be a female, or it could be somebody's
Ever.
grandfather or something. So yeah, that's the thing about these cases, is they're so spontaneous that, and I think that's why a lot of the skeptics destroy this type of work, because it's not the coronavirus. You don't take a swab, bring it into a lab, look at it under the microscope, and you can swab 50 different people with the coronavirus that are sick with it, and the same type of virus, unless it's obviously a variant, but basically the same virus is going to show up underneath the microscope. It's testable. It's
Yeah,
replicable, but
exactly.
but ghosts aren't. Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
what if we do a Mission Impossible Rogue Nation thing, where the let's say a nun shows up, because there's a nun behind you. A nun shows up at the corner there of my apartment, where you go into the bathroom, or my bedroom, and all of a sudden we have this plastic thing when she appears, drop down on her, and try to keep her from disappearing. That would be really something. That's why I'm interested in hauntings that are frequent and replicable, whatever, you know what I mean, people.
Replicable.
Replicable. I knew there was an extra accent or syllable in there. And so we could, then what you can do. You can check the environment, you can see what's going on. And if things appear to be really weird, then maybe you can try something a little bit daring, like like Mission Impossible. But you know, but then would, you know what would happen? The nun would appear there. One of us would have the switch in his hand or her hand and just be so scared they wouldn't do shit.
Yep. No,
You
it's
know,
true.
because we believe in it, or we believe there's something to it. And I think a lot of that is hope, you know, and I think we can admit that. We hope there's ghosts. Now, I don't hope there's ghosts because that means there's an afterlife and I'll live forever and blah 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 blah. You know, heaven ever after. I believe in ghosts. I don't know what they are, but I believe in ghosts. And so yeah, so I'm more into grab. I have to grab one. I have to control one. I have to understand what's going on when one appears. Whoopsie doopsie. And there, I throw my lighting away. And so anyway, that's what I want to do. And maybe somehow get a little bit of an idea of what's going on. If there's a barrier, what's going on the other side. Now, I'm a Roman Catholic, you're a Roman Catholic, but my religion doesn't enter into it. Religion has nothing to do with it, other than the fact I'm sure it's made me more accepting of the idea of ghosts, even though religion, until very recently, said it was demonic forces and everything. But they've come around now, and they no longer dismiss them as you know as the works of the devil. And so that's my thing to do. And I'm just hoping that I just don't have a nervous breakdown like I did in that Atlantic room. I mean, through the previous 4 episodes that we've done, she's more than that. I think people have taken from me that I'm strongly demanding of evidence and rationalist and materialist and, you know, open to it. But, you know, like I said, I really don't see RSPK doing poltergeists. I'm sorry. The theory has not been proven, you know, to put the two of them together. Yeah, let's blame the teenage girl that's horny. You know, I mean, that just bothers me a bit. And there's other things as well, and we've talked about and everything, but I think they can probably discern my, you know, and I don't know how many parapsychologists go through this. I mean, they don't write down what they see. You know, they write down what they see, but they don't write down what they feel.
Mhm.
And you know, it's a very personal, some would say subjective, I would say objective, because anybody in that room would have saw that, I'll say boy. White shirt, shorts, darker color, see-through though. So I'll say beige shorts, blonde hair type of thing. I always like blondes anyway. So, but anyway, you know, to me that was an objective. We could have Carl Sagan, or you know, a lot of them are dead now, but you know, we could bring whatever skeptics in as well, walking in, and they would see that as well. I mean, it was too obvious. You couldn't miss it. And unfortunately, it happened when I wasn't expecting it. And I was thinking this is just a lark. And I wanted to get out of doing the presentation. And, you know, type of thing. And I was kind of curious about it. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't what I wanted.
So let me ask you this, because I
What I
better
wanted all my life.
I bet our listeners are wondering this too. So before you had that experience, what's your belief, I guess, in ghosts, and as in human consciousness continuing beyond clinical death?
Well, that's just one theory. I believe in ghosts. I just don't understand what they are yet. There seems to be multiple ghosts, ghosts, apparitions, and this thing. We talk about residual, you know, apparitions, and I can't understand. I think there's a weather component to it, very strongly feel. There's a weather component to it, and I strongly feel there's an electromagnetic component to it. Now, whether that helps them appear or that causes us to hallucinate, I don't know yet. There's still a lot of research to do. Before I stepped into that room, I think you, who's been a good friend for 23, 24 years now, and just about anybody else, I can hear them I can hear them talking as they're watching this. Especially Karen, who I forgot to send happy birthday to yesterday, would say, "Oh, you're just a damn cynic." So when I walked into that room, I was not primed for a ghost. I wasn't primed for anything. I just walked in the room because I thought, oh, it's going to be another room, and I'll look around. Oh yeah, it's supposed to be a boy going in. Yeah, fuck off. I can't wait to go home. I'm tired. And so anyway, I walk into this room, and I walk into the room, and I'm not in my reality anymore. And yeah, you can laugh that off, people. I don't give a shit. If you see me before, I'm a cynic, and borderline skeptic, but not the professional one. I demand hard evidence, and if you're going to come at me with RSPK for poltergeist, I want to see the evidence, type of thing. But when I walked into that room, I was very much aware that that room was separate from outside that door. And even if I had not seen the boy dive under the table and seen the tablecloth come up, and yet the tablecloth that was there stay perfect. So whatever whatever happened had happened many years ago, and it was essentially a residual presence. And other than your mother, which I was very surprised, who did not have a reaction to that room at all, everybody else, in fact, the two girls that were at Jeff and I's table, refused to enter into the room. They went into there was a 5-foot, 10-foot entranceway with, surprisingly, arches before you went into the room.
Mhm.
They refused to go farther into that room. So, yeah, so I mean, like I said to Leslie, I'm just combobulated because it's an experience I can't process. Even though it's an experience I wanted to process. And I'm going to have to think a lot on it.
So it's not really the fact that that you don't believe ghosts existed like before then. You knew that they existed. It's just to actually see one
Yeah.
and not just read about it. Through experimental parapsychology.
You walk through a building and they say, "Oh, there's a woman in white here," and blah blah blah. And I stayed at Spry Bay 3 weeks before Mom died in 2018. I finally took a vacation after 13 years of taking care of my dying parents. I told my sister, "Hey, I don't care who's taking care of Mom next week. I'm not going to be here." So I go up to Spry Bay, and Lord Thunder and Jesus by, as if it isn't one of the places where a ghost ship comes in and goes right onto the land. And our cabin would have been right where it was going, and it was pretty cool and all that. If I'd seen the ghost ship, I think that would have been probably even worse than the boy. But it was kind of cool. It was kind of nice to be there and in the middle of the folklore and that story and everything. But yeah, and when like I said, when I went to go into that room, it was more or less just to, kind of wander around, see what's in the room. The story was ridiculous. A boy bouncing up, dribbling a ball across that was ridiculous. Unless they told me there was a basketball, court there or something.
I asked them that actually. I said that. I said, was it ever used as a gym or anything like that? And they said no. So I don't know. I don't know if the boy was a guest at the hotel at one point and had a basketball with him, and I'm not sure. I do think one of the I think one of the mediums, it might have been Carmel, the lady you had brought in after my mom. Um, I think she may have said she got a sense that the boy may have been a part of a wedding that was there at some point.
The clothing he would have been wearing for a summer wedding, yes.
So I mean, yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say why ghosts remain at certain
How do
places. I mean, some of you understand. Like for example, Alexander Keith's Brewery in Halifax is haunted. The staff still report that he walks through there, but I mean that brewery was his entire life. I mean, he went to school to be a brewmaster. He came over from from overseas to here. He established his brewery. He loved his brewery so much he had a tunnel that led from Alexander Keith's Brewery up to a block away up to his house. So I mean, it makes sense that his spirit would still roam there. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a fascinating subject. I mean, that's why you and I are involved in this.
Yeah, you can't explain it to anybody who hasn't seen it or is not interested or is a skeptic. You can't explain what it does to you. You can't explain what you felt. You can't explain what you saw, and you can't explain how your brain tries to fit that into your worldview. And yeah, I mean, I can understand why a lot of people don't talk about it. And before, I've always kind of thought, well, come on, people, you got to talk about it. We need material, we need evidence, we need, stuff to work with. But I can understand why they might not. And I can certainly understand why what reputation I may have as a parapsychologist may be taking a hit, um, just because I claim to see a ghost. And let me be extremely clear here. There's two possibilities. I had a psychotic hallucination or doing something that I would not expect. I would expect the boy to be dribbling or walking or whatever. Or I saw a ghost. There's only two possibilities. Under extreme stress, which I have been, I've hallucinated music before and shapes out of the corner of my eye. But there are the obvious hallucinations. I've trained in psychology as well as parapsychology, so I know what a hallucination is versus a reality of seeing something. And there was a little boy who went under that damn table. I don't know what year he did it. I don't know why he did it. And I don't know why I saw him do it again. That was not a hallucination. Period. Full stop. End of story. I don't know what it was. Whether it was caused by something in the room, like carbon monoxide or whatever. But it wasn't internally generated just because I have high anxiety and things. Most people in the paranormal, especially in ESP and stuff like that, are definitely. You show me somebody that goes to tarot readings or whatever, and I'll show you somebody with generalized anxiety disorder. It's so obvious that it's funny, but that wouldn't explain, because that was not part of the description. If I had walked into that room and had that feeling, and the feeling was caused by something mechanical or electrical or whatever, and then I saw a boy, okay, then I could have wrote it off as, okay, suggestion. There's no reason I saw him go underneath that table. And the thing that most sticks with me, it wasn't that he just went under the table. It was that he pulled up the tablecloth. Now, the tablecloth of 2021 stayed normal, but he picked up a tablecloth and went under. If it's an hallucination, you would think the hallucination would just dive underneath, the table. I witnessed something that happened, I think. I don't know. and it's going to bother me for a while. I've kind of like put it aside. I've written about it, put some notes down and to myself and that kind of thing. But I think I'm more prepared for the next time. I didn't have a camera or anything. God, I wish I'd had a video camera, my GoPro or something going on at that time. But and everybody's going to laugh and say, "Oh yeah, that's what you always say." Yeah, the battery.
Actually, that's what you always used to lecture to us as investigators with CPSC was, I think you always said, if you saw an apparition, I don't care if you piss your pants, reach for that camera and get the picture.
I put an F word before that. Yes, I certainly did. And I certainly walked into this situation unprepared and cynical because, it's been too long. And I've been tricked before too many times and, all that stuff. But yes, I used to tell just my students of parapsychology as well as my investigators in the Center for Parapsychological Studies in Canada, when we were an active investigative group as opposed to research now. I told them, like I said, like you said, I don't care if you piss your pants, grab that fucking camera and get that picture for me. And unfortunately, I didn't do it. I didn't even think about doing it because I didn't think there was that many ghosts there. If I was going now, I'd have my GoPro. But at that time, it was just whispers. You just heard something about your dog groomer mentioned something on the 8th floor type of thing. It's like, I heard that a million times before. A year ago, I stayed at a haunted bed and breakfast at Indianapolis Royal, which is supposedly really haunted. And I had my cameras and I shot everything anyway. Not that I expect to pick anything up, but that I wanted to document the building. And I was prepared for that, but I wasn't. I was prepared to help you do a lecture on parapsychology, parapsychologists, what we do, and everything. And then the people from Ontario really loved that big table in front of you as you're facing the back. Because mostly everybody else we knew, there was just that large group from Ontario. Afterwards, I went up to them while you were tearing things down and everything and told them what I saw. And, and I'm sure everybody saw my face when I walked into the room.
Oh, yes.
Especially anybody that knew me, knew that there was something had really seriously gone wrong.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, I know my mom knew that you were rattled. And then Carmel, we were just at her house on Saturday. Sarah and I went over and had dinner with her, and she asked about you and about the
wrote to me, and I got to return that, but I got busy doing stuff, and I haven't got back to her because
I'll let her know when I'm talking to her. But she had asked about you and about your experience, and I said, oh yeah, he's still rattled. And I told her about your friend Leslie that had been over, and I said when you were recounting the story to her that it actually like brought you to tears. I was like, it definitely changed his life and his experience. But one more topic before we conclude our episode here, about photography. So you have some training in photography. I know you took a course or a diploma or a program in photography. And photography is an interesting thing in the paranormal. So we've heard different things. Like, for example, some of the stuff like Lloyd Auerbach teaches about, he says, if you can see it, then it should be showing up on the camera, right? So, but then I think back to some of the, like Ted Sirios and the psychic photography and things like that. Like, what's your take on that with your training in photography? Like when we go into these homes, like, and initially take photographs, the reason why we do that is we're documenting the scene. We're documenting a picture of the house, the rooms and things like that, so that later on we can go back and say like, oh, Jesus, I didn't know that, but this guy has an alarm clock next to his bed and he's complaining about seeing an apparition at nighttime only when he's sleeping in his room. And then we go back and we check the alarm clock and we find out that it's faulty and it's giving off like excessive amounts of electromagnetic radiation. So it's almost like photographing a crime scene. But in your, I guess, like expert opinion on photography, what's your thought? Like, if you were just randomly going around a haunted house taking photos and you don't see anything, would a ghost show up on that photo, or should you have been able to see the ghost?
If I was paying attention, I should have seen the ghost. What happens is, in a lot of time in photography, is the fact that you are focused on one subject and you miss what else is in the background or the foreground or whatever. So you have to be, photography isn't grabbing the phone, doing this and snapping. Sometimes you have to, but it's not. It's setting up the camera. It's seeing what lighting it is, set the camera for that particular lighting, unless you want to do automatic. Most people do. If you've got a Canon, one of the high-end Canons, you can't take a bad photograph. It's impossible. The Canon will override your stupidity.
That's what I need. That's exactly what I need.
Or whatever is the $5,000, $6,000 one. And love to have it. But anyway, so you take your picture, and then you're focused on your subject. And very often what you do is you miss something else. Now, it's very, and I've said this before, if an apparition showed up, you would have seen it, And so if they materialize in a physical thing, they're there, just like that bookcase is there, these two lighting things are here, the Christmas tree is there, the chair is here. It's visible. If the camera catches it, your eye should have caught it. And because our eyes are even better than a camera at picking up things. Now, then you get to people like Ted Serios and all that kind of thing, and I think that was just total bullshit and gaming the camera type of thing. A lot of it was like smudges and stuff, and it's like, well, that's useless to me. I mean, and even if he did, big fucking deal. What does that prove? Oh, you can put images on film. Let's assume he can do that. It's like, okay, big deal. Unless you're giving me nudes of some Hollywood star I want to fuck, well, that's fine. But if not, unless you're doing that, there really isn't any, whatever. Jesus Christ, okay, let's start getting into things like that. But yeah, so no, if you take a picture and later it's somebody or something is there, assuming you're not taking it out of context or growing it into something more than it actually was, it was there at the moment you took the picture. There's the famous one about the little girl on the hill in the grass and a supposed alien behind her. And of course, they've done analysis, realized it was just the woman had a basket or something like that, the mother. And of course, the father was busy taking a picture of his daughter. He wasn't watching what was behind. So that's what Joe Nickel and a lot of people that in the skeptics, that's why I follow them too, because they not only keep us on our toes, but they also remind us that, we're imperfect beings and that we, these are the things you got to watch out for. If you're taking pictures, you're looking through that viewfinder or on that screen, you take your time to set it up and look and see everything there and see everything there. And if a ghost shows up, the ghost is going to show up there. It's as simple as that. EVP. If they can talk on EVP with digital ones and zeros, which I particularly think is BS, then you would have heard them. It's as simple as that. They, ghosts manipulating ones and zeros on electronic, thing is about as stupid an idea to me as Creepy Canada once. It was I don't know, I think it was 12, maybe 2 years a series on ghosts in Canada. And it wasn't bad. A lot of it was made up, but it wasn't bad. But you could tell that they were getting people to kind of, up their game, talk more about it than it really was. I love the one about the woman who went to bed and woke up and the ghost must have been angry, took the door off the hinges and put it in the hallway. It's like, yeah, oh yeah, and you didn't wake up. Okie dokie. Yeah,
Mm,
so yeah, I mean, I'm still, even with the little boy, still don't throw bullshit at me and expect me to smell roses. Um, it's unfortunately we've lost as parapsychologists and ghost hunters, especially, have lost any respect that they had in the 18th century, 19th century, and early 20th century. Now, of course, with the internet and obviously with all those shows, um, it's a joke now, and Bigfoot went the same way. And yeah, I mean, how do you bring in evidence of a ghost now? You'd have to set something up that's extremely complex, of a place where this particular ghost would appear constantly. And you'd have to have the skeptics with you, and a very strong skeptic, not only to keep you on your toes, but for him to see it and then
mhm.
see all the evidence and say, I can't prove that. I can't say that that's, there's something weird going on. That's what you need to do. And
Well, it's really interesting that you brought up the topic of skeptics. I mean, you and I mean, we can sit here and talk about different things in parapsychology for years. It's just so fascinating. But I just recently finished taking the skeptical approach to parapsychology course from Ryan Education Center, and I personally, before I took that course, um, completely, I would say, hate's a strong word, but I probably hated skeptics just because, I sometimes they can be rude, they can be ignorant.
yeah,
They can attack,
condescending.
condescending, they can attack you. But what I didn't realize until I took that course is that there's a difference between a skeptic and a pseudo skeptic. And it's the pseudo skeptics that I have a problem with, because they are the ones that have the tendency to just deny everything. So, like, for example, some of the parapsychological studies that have had very good methodology, and that's kind of a misconception in the field of parapsychology, is that scientists always shit on the methodology used in the research, but parapsychology actually has a lot more stringent conditions that they follow, because they are constantly being shit on by pseudo skeptics, and even people in their own field. So parapsychology studies actually tend to have better controls in place than regular psychology studies. And I
And
think that's one of
we don't suffer from the shelf, the drawer effect, where in psychology, like, if something doesn't work out, you just put it in the drawer and you don't publish it. So what happens is false positives tend and so drugs are get on the market and are used that are absolutely no good, because they're only picking and choosing the ones that, in parapsychology, we've got such stringent um, overlookers on us that we can't afford just to stick the failures into a drawer and
yes.
and take the positive ones out. So yeah, you're right. It certainly is much more of the laboratory applied, experimental parapsychology is much more stringent than many psychological or medical protocols for doing.
Definitely, and they have to be if they want to be taken serious. But the pseudo skeptics, like, normally what it comes down to, if they can't debunk it, then they always just blame the methodology. And I find that's just, or they just simply say, like, psi doesn't exist, or they'll say some stupid thing like that. But they do have a tendency to just discredit something rather than investigate it. Whereas, like, a skeptic, really, I don't like the term skeptic, I guess, because it has such a bad connotation to it. But really, all a true skeptic is just somebody that's being critical of
Yeah.
the work. And I am like that. Like, in the Exeter case, when the kids said that they heard scratching coming from their walls, the first thing I did is I went outside and I looked up at their window to make sure there wasn't a tree branch scraping against the window, or that there wasn't. And that happens. My aunt, we were just in Ottawa last week, And my aunt told me that she was sitting down watching TV and she got spooked because something was at the window, and she looked and it was her rose bush had grown so long that the thorns were scraping against the window. So I mean, that kind of shit happens. And so it's normal to, somebody says they're scratching at the window, that you go out and you check the window first. You don't just say, oh, it's a demon or it's a fucking ghost or whatever. You do your investigation. And skeptics, pseudo skeptics, sorry, don't tend to do that. It's more like a personal attack. They just, they try and counterclaim, our claims, and they just have a tendency, I guess the general gist of it is they have a tendency to dismiss any sort of evidence towards what we don't understand, which is funny. I'm sure NASA probably has people attacking their dark matter theories, but they know, we know dark matter exists. We just don't know what it is, or we can't see it.
We do not know. Do you know how much of astronomy is either a thought experience or a theory? I was watching the other day how much of that is theoretical physics. So
it's mostly
about reality.
It's mostly theoretical physics, because I love space, and Sarah laughs at me because our little saying to each other is nothing good comes from space, because every time you watch a movie, it's always a bad microbe that comes and you turn into zombies or aliens attack. So we always say nothing good comes from space. Even this summer, she had a sunburn, and I looked at her and I said, nothing good comes from space, because a sunburn is actually UV radiation.
Yeah.
So, but you're right, because they're always like, for example, they think for example, or just recently, they just published an article saying that they think there's water on Mars, but it's underneath the soil. But we don't fucking know that, because we've never stepped foot on the planet.
Yeah,
we're basing that off a satellite, a probe that they've launched that's taking samples and stuff from up above the atmosphere, and they're just basing it on obviously there's a science to it. They're basing it on the geology that they can see with the rovers on the land, and the images and the satellite images that are being sent back and things like that. But ultimately, we don't know.
Schrodinger's cat, which is much more complex than what is talked about in the media, is a thought experiment. It's not thought to be real. The whole idea of one particle being positive, and if you look at this one, well, then this one over here will turn negative no matter how far away they are. That's not real. That's a thought experiment. So after you learn this kind of stuff, and then of course people grab a hold of this and say, well, this is what's causing ESP and the energy and all this kind of stuff. But we don't even really understand a lot about the universe. A lot of it's guesswork, theoretical, thought experiments, dark energy, dark matter. I think dark matter, which one of them is dark energy, they think they've got the proof for, but the other one they don't. And I can't remember which order it's in. But a lot of things don't work out because they're just, people get there and they're writing their mathematical equations and they're thinking, well, that must mean that X equals whatever. Well, no, that doesn't necessarily mean, because there's like 27 lines of code you've written up ahead. And, it's, you're making the Drake, oh God, it drives me crazy. The Drake equation.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's like, there's like 6 different variables we do not know. So we can't plug that in to find out why we're not hearing people. And if you look at the whole galaxy we're in, this is the whole galaxy, the picture that I'm now in, only that much we've explored, heard, or sent out radio waves. And yet it's this huge thing. So yeah, there's lots of reasons we don't hear from aliens, because they're too far away. And as our radio programs go out, they degrade and all this kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you just don't know. And there were some very smart people trying to figure out and do the equations to see if they can prove something. And send the rover down onto Mars and dig in and suck up what it can find. And if it finds frozen, water, then okay, bang, that's
Yeah.
probably true.
Yep.
But
And see, they're getting to that point. Like the Perseverance that's on there now, has a couple of samples, and eventually, I'm not sure if they plan on launching it back up into space and having it sent, or if they're waiting for a manned mission to come and collect the samples. But either way, at some point, they're going to get those rock samples back here so that we actually can and take a look at it. But a lot of it is just guesswork. Like you said, even when they discover a new planet, they base that off of how the light is like.
permutations in other like Planet 9. They
Yep.
think Planet 9 is way past Uranus and the Oort cloud, and they think because every 10,000 years it kind of comes around, that explains why Uranus is on its side and the permutations or whatever it's called in its orbit is caused by that.
Yeah.
Other people think it's just the Oort cloud that has enough rocks and comets in it that it can do that. Do you know how big the Oort cloud actually is?
I've seen like graphic art, whatever they call them, artist concepts or whatever. It looks like it's absolutely massive. And in fact, I think the Voyager is about to well, it left our solar system, but I don't know. I can't remember the last update if it's like made it to the Oort cloud.
If
True.
you cause it, because what they one person was saying was that the Oort cloud was part of our solar system because it still reacts to the sun. The thing is, Alpha Centauri is 4 light years away. If you put the Oort cloud in with the solar system as a part of our system, it goes 3 light years away. So that means we're only 1 light year away from an Alpha Centauri, if we were on the Oort cloud, of course. And of course, that's just ridiculous. I mean, at what point there has to be some specific, very precise point where the effect of the sun and its pull on anything stops. Then I don't care if there's a whole bunch of crap still moving around it, unless the sun is acting on it, because that other stuff is just stuff that never got made into planets and all that. And maybe someday it will be made into a planet, who knows? But anyway, that's just something circling, whatever. It's like your neighbor, you're in your apartment and your neighbor's in the car and he's doing donuts around the neighborhood. That doesn't mean he's a friend of yours. It just means that he's not a family member. He's not your brother. He's just going around you know what I mean?
He's just an asshole doing donuts in the parking lot.
Exactly. So, yeah. So try not to just, but it's funny because when I hear all this, I'm thinking, and you shit on us for what we think and what we put out, the theories we put out, and try to understand, these really bizarre things. I'm thinking the universe is just as bizarre.
So it's true. It's true when you look at that, because I find space very fascinating, and obviously you do too. But you look at some of those things that we hear, or you read those articles on CNN, and they don't get half the criticism that people studying parapsychology do.
Oh my God! If we came out at them with, I don't know, pick the latest weird thing that's supposed to be out there or happen to us, and if we came out with that, oh my God, we'd be just, they would just shit on us so bad.
Yeah.
Methodology, we didn't study it enough. This is a ridiculous premise, blah, 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 and all that. And yet they've got, all these things, that they think the world, function, or the universe functions. And it's all guesswork. Most of it is guesswork, and it kind of works, but then there's all these different things that kind of throw your universe off. It's like all of a sudden it doesn't work quite like that. And there are things going faster than the speed of light. Well, how are you going to explain that? Nobody's shitting on you for saying things go faster than the speed of light, even though that's supposed to be the universal, speed limit. And so,
well, the other interesting thing is time. Like, time's a concept that we've kind of created, and one thing you hear from mediums about the afterlife is that there does not seem to be a time. They're not like, okay, I'm going to appear before Darryll here. I'm the little boy in the Atlantic room. I'm going to appear before Darryll here in 10 minutes. Like, they have no concept of time, because time in their dimension, or whatever you want to call it, their realm, doesn't exist anymore.
And it wouldn't,
No,
no reason for time.
because you're just energy that is somehow still existing, right? So it's fascinating. I guess that's why we love this stuff.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
is. Well, I guess we'll wrap this episode up. And I checked while we were talking. This is, and you were right, because you're like, oh, geez, feels like we've done a little bit more. This is actually episode 6. So we've done because, and it makes sense, because we decided to do this podcast halfway through the year. So this is episode 6. Yeah.
Did we happen to mention that we were one of the top 10 parapsychology or paranormal?
No, just
Last fall.
Yeah, in October, I think we got named one of the top 10 somehow, one of the top 10 podcasts by Podsauce, and yeah, it was really cool. A friend of mine had sent it to me, and I saw her podcast on it, and I thought that's why she was sending it to me. But then, as I was scrolling through to look at the other ones, I saw us on there as well, and they thought it was a really cool show, and
We're going to have to up our game, try to get more viewers and stuff like that. And
I know, and actually, that's a good reminder. So we are on YouTube under the Dueling Parapsychologist podcast. So look us up on there, and you can watch the video of Darryll and I. We always do a video and then an audio for Apple and Spotify and all the podcast platforms. But if you can take a second, go on YouTube, type in the Dueling Parapsychologist podcast, give us a like and a subscribe. Same with Apple. You can leave reviews. If you can give us a review on it, that'd be fantastic.
we might be able to use that in a future podcast. Somebody might suggest something that we should do, or suggest something we missed when we discussed, whatever it was.
Yeah, and actually, what we could do too, like, you can always email us as well. We always at the end of our closing theme song, we always give our email, but it's info@ppri.net. If there's something you want to hear Darryll and I talk about, or argue about, or discuss, send us an email, and maybe what we'll do for one episode next year, maybe we'll do, like, if I can figure out how to record it, so that we can put it onto audio, but maybe we could do like a Facebook Live or something like that, where people could sign in and ask us questions, and we'll try and answer them. And if we don't know the answer, we'll do the research for you and get back to you. But we'll try and do something interactive like that maybe next year, which is just around the corner. So that's good. But yeah, so anyways, give us a check out, and you can check our website out too at ppri.net. It's got links to Darryll's biography, my biography, links to our books that are for sale. It's got a link to it's going to have a link to, I just added the link there today. Darryll and I are conjuring from the dead, a newsletter called Parascientifica. It was initially it was a newsletter for the Center for Parapsychological Studies in Canada's members and also subscribers. We're going to try it digitally first, and then maybe, if I can find a company to do it and it's reasonable, do a print on demand and actually, print it out as a magazine kind of thing. We just got approved by the government to get our ISSN numbers for both print and electronic. So we're hoping to produce.
Resurrect that. That was my favorite baby doing that.
I love it too. I love it. I've scanned in some of the old ones and put them on our shared drive for our current members to read. But it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and of course, unfortunately, I hate to be like a couple of things I hate in the internet. They say smash that button. It's just like, just hit the button, okay?
Smash that like button. That's what they always say.
Hit the button. Don't smash the button. You'll break it. And then they say, the other thing they say, but in a way you have to, is of course the fact that not only just subscribe and like for YouTube, but we're also on Patreon and as well. So I mean, it does take time, money, and we've put a lot of expense into the equipment that we're using to do this. So it would be nice to someday be able to get a little bit back. I mean, If we don't, we don't. I mean, we're doing this because we're parapsychologists. We love this field. We want to discuss it. We want to let other people know what's going on. And yeah, so I mean, the lighting here that I'm using right now, that I bought this year, maybe I can write that off on my taxes if I learn how to do it. And anybody out there, if you want to do my taxes, Halifax, Nova Scotia. But yeah, Patreon's there and support us that way and that kind of thing. And we have a few projects we want to do with Ghost Project and stuff like that. That I think we'll be doing some crowdfunding, next year.
Yeah.
And
And we should be hearing back from Canada Revenue soon too about our charitable organization status as well. They told me in January, so the time is almost here, and hopefully that's either approved or it's declined with conditions, and I can meet those conditions. I just need to know what their issues are.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Well, until next time, guys.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.